Marina Cardozo watched her father walk the perimeter from the kitchen window, with the particular expression of a woman watching someone perform a ritual she knew to be unnecessary, but couldn't bring herself to interrupt. Seu Joaquim Cardoso, 73, headlamp burning white against the dark, machete in hand, boots laced to the knee, moved along the compound's edge with the methodical pace of a century. The route was 300 meters. He walked it 3 times each night, once at dusk, once at midnight, once before dawn. Every night, every season, for 31 years. The headlamp swept the ground in precise arcs, left, center, right, each arc covering the 2-meter strip between the compound's cleared ground and the forest's edge. He was looking for Bushmasters, specifically for the Lachesis muta, the largest venomous snake in the Western Hemisphere, up to 3.5 meters of brown and tan camouflaged muscle that could sit motionless on the leaf litter for days, waiting for a rodent to walk past, and that carried enough venom to kill a human adult in under 6 hours without antivenom. The Envira River tributary hosted one of the densest populations of Bushmasters in Amazonia. The primary forest surrounding the Cardoso compound was ideal habitat. Deep leaf litter, high rodent density, stable temperatures. In 31 years, Joaquim had found Bushmasters on his perimeter patrol 87 times. He kept count. Each encounter was logged in a notebook: date, location, size, direction of movement, outcome.
Leaf pattern, brown with dark diamonds. They lie along the edges where the leaf litter meets the open ground. You see the head first, triangular, wider than the neck. You never see the body until you've already seen the head.
From the kitchen, Marina tracked her father's headlamp moving along the tree line. 3 nights home from Manaus, and each night the same routine. The patrol, the grandson, the machete, the absolute conviction that his nightly circuit was the membrane between his family and the forest's most lethal resident. Marina had a laptop open on the kitchen table. On the screen, a tracking map, 12 Bushmaster GPS signals, the biotelemetry study she'd spent 18 months conducting in this exact forest, tracking individual snakes with surgically implanted transmitters. 12 snakes, 18 months of movement data, and a conclusion that she hadn't yet shared with her father. Joaquim's patrol had started in 1995. The year his youngest daughter, not Marina, the other one, Solange, had been bitten, 8 years old, playing at the compound's edge at dusk. The Bushmaster was coiled beneath the mango tree's root flare. Solange stepped on it. The strike hit her calf. The venom, hemotoxic, tissue-destroying, the particular chemistry that Lachesis uses to begin digesting prey before swallowing, began its work immediately. 9 hours to the clinic. The canoe trip in the dark. Joaquim paddling with a speed that only a father carrying a bitten child produces. Solange survived. The leg did not. Necrosis. Amputation below the knee. The particular cost that Bushmaster venom exacts when treatment is delayed. After that, the patrols. Every night. The machete, the headlamp, the 3-circuit route that Joaquim designed using the logic of a man who believed that if he'd been walking the perimeter on the night Solange was bitten, he would have found the snake before it found his daughter.
31 years. 87 snakes found and relocated. 0 bites since Solange. The patrol works.
I've found 87 snakes on the perimeter.
The tracking data. Marina opened the laptop and turned it to face her father. 12 color-coded tracks. The GPS traces of 12 individual Bushmasters, mapped over 18 months. Each snake's movement rendered as a colored line on the satellite image of the compound and surrounding forest. The lines formed a pattern. The Bushmasters moved through the primary forest. Long, slow transits between ambush positions, the animals covering hundreds of meters over weeks as they shifted between rodent activity zones. The movement was nocturnal, deliberate, and, critically, absent from the compound. The compound was a white space on the movement map, a void. 12 snakes, 18 months, and not a single GPS track entered the cleared area. The Bushmasters approached the forest edge. Several tracks showed animals coming within 5 meters of the perimeter, and then turned. Not because Joaquim was patrolling, because the habitat was wrong.
Bushmasters are ambush predators. They need leaf litter for camouflage. They need rodent paths for prey. The compound has neither. You cleared the ground. You eliminated the leaf litter. You removed the habitat. The clearing keeps them out, not the patrol.
Joaquim looked at the map, the colored lines stopping at the forest edge like waves stopping at a seawall. The compound, his compound, cleared by his hands 31 years ago, functioning as a biological barrier that the Bushmasters couldn't cross, not because of a man with a machete, but because of a man with a rake. The night after Marina showed him the data, Joaquim walked the patrol anyway. Not because he believed Marina was wrong. The data was clear. The tracks didn't enter the clearing. The biological logic was sound. Bushmasters needed cover, and the compound was coverless. The evidence pointed away from the patrol's effectiveness. He walked because stopping felt like surrender. 31 years of nightly circuits, 90 minutes per night, 365 nights per year, 31 years. Over 34,000 patrols represented not just time, but identity. He was the patrolman, the family's sentry, the father who'd let his daughter get bitten and had spent 3 decades making sure it never happened again. To discover whether a 73-year-old patriarch can let go of the patrol that defined him, and whether the universe notices the difference, subscribe to Amazon Swamp Survival. Some sentries guard against things that were never coming. Carlinos walked with him. The boy, 11, the age of apprenticeship, the age when dangerous knowledge becomes useful knowledge, followed his grandfather's headlamp through the dark with the attentive silence of a student who hasn't yet decided if the lesson is fear or love. The headlamp found something. Movement at the edge, the particular ripple of scales on dry leaves that triggers every Bushmaster alarm in Joaquim's nervous system. He froze. The light steadied. And there, at the precise boundary between cleared ground and forest floor, a Bushmaster lay in its classic ambush posture, coiled loosely, head raised 2 centimeters above the leaf litter, the body perfectly aligned with the forest's camouflage. 2.8 meters, a mature female. The brown and tan pattern dissolving into the leaf litter so completely that without the headlamp's direct beam, the snake was invisible. The eye, vertical pupil, heat-sensing pit between eye and nostril, reflected the headlamp's light with a single amber flash. The snake was at the edge, on the edge, the exact boundary where leaf litter met cleared ground. And as Joaquim watched, machete raised, body set, the reflex of 31 years preparing to engage, the snake turned. The head tracking rightward, the body following in the slow undulation of a large crotolin navigating terrain, and the entire animal moved parallel to the boundary, not crossing, traveling along the edge, following the border between forest and clearing the way a person follows a fence line. The Bushmaster reached a tree root that extended from the forest floor into the first meter of cleared ground. The root was covered in leaf litter, a narrow bridge of habitat crossing the boundary. The snake paused. The head explored the root, tongue flickering, the heat pits scanning the exposed ground beyond. And then it turned back. Into the forest. The root bridge was insufficient, too exposed, too narrow, the cleared ground beyond too barren. The snake's programming, millions of years of ambush predator evolution calibrated for deep leaf litter and dense cover, rejected the entry. Joaquim watched the Bushmaster disappear into the forest understory, number 88 in his notebook, at the perimeter, on the edge, not crossing.
She didn't cross.
Tia Marina said they don't.
The indifferent universe. The snake didn't avoid the compound because of Joaquim. It didn't avoid the compound because of the patrol, the headlamp, the machete, or 31 years of vigilance. It avoided the compound because the compound's habitat was wrong. The universe, the biological system that governed Bushmaster behavior, was indifferent to human effort. It responded to ground cover, not to sentries. Joaquim stopped the midnight patrol on a Thursday. Not the dusk patrol. Not the dawn patrol, the midnight circuit, the one that cost him 4 hours of sleep, the one his body had been protesting with increasing joint pain, and the particular exhaustion of a 73-year-old who hadn't slept through the night in 3 decades. He replaced it with something else. Maintenance. The clearing. Marina's data had shown him the mechanism. The absence of leaf litter was the barrier, and the mechanism required upkeep. Leaves fell daily. The forest constantly tried to reclaim the boundary with its carpet of debris. Without maintenance, the cleared zone would accumulate cover within weeks, and the barrier would soften. The rake replaced the machete. Not entirely, the dusk and dawn patrols continued. The headlamp still swept the perimeter. The identification lessons with Carlinhos still ran, but the midnight circuit became the maintenance hour, raking leaf litter away from the compound's boundary, keeping the barrier crisp, the transition from forest to clearing as sharp as a line drawn in dirt. The revelation cost Joaquim his heroism. 31 years of patrols had built a narrative. The father who protected his family from the most dangerous snake in the Americas. And Marina's data had dismantled it. The protection was real. The protector was the habitat modification, not the man. That was the hardest part, not accepting the science. Joaquim was practical, and the tracking data was persuasive. The hard part was accepting that his 34,000 patrols had been unnecessary, that the 87 snakes he'd found and relocated would have turned away on their own, that the family's safety was a function of clearing, not of courage. But Marina countered. Sitting with him on the platform, watching the forest's edge darken as the sun dropped, she gave him a different frame. The reframe helped. Not instantly, identity doesn't restructure overnight, and a man who has defined himself as a sentry for 31 years doesn't become a groundskeeper without friction. But the work shifted. The machete hung on the wall with the dignity of a retired weapon. The rake leaned by the door with the practicality of a tool in daily use. Carlinhos continued the training. Not patrols, ecology. Marina taught him what the GPS data showed. How bushmasters moved, where they hunted, why the clearing worked. The knowledge that Joaquim had transmitted through fear. The snakes are dangerous. The perimeter must be watched. Marina transmitted through understanding. The snakes are present. The habitat is the defense. Maintain the habitat. The universe remained indifferent. The Bushmasters continued their slow transits through the primary forest, following rodent paths, occupying ambush positions, approaching the compound's edge, and turning away. Not because anyone was watching, but because the ground was wrong. The patrol had never been wrong. It had been misattributed. Joaquim had kept his family safe, not by walking the perimeter, but by clearing it. The method was different from his story. The result was the same. Some protections are architectural. The forest's most dangerous resident doesn't require a sentry, it requires a rake.